So in this video, we're going to be talking about sectioning. So sectioning is basically you have a space and you want to divide it into equal parts. So usually in a perspective view, perhaps you're looking, let's say, at a road and you will have a row of trees. And this row of trees would be in real life spaced equally apart. Okay, so if you want to draw something like this in perspective, then normally what you would do is you're going to eyeball that or you're going to guess. But there is a way to be able to draw this in perspective view. So we'll get into that. So I'm going to start by presenting you with the side view. So the side view, what does the row of trees look like when we're looking at it directly? So let's say this is the side of the road and you have one tree. I'm going to represent that by a post. So we have one post right there. So assume that that's a tree. And then you have a second tree that's right here, that's of the same size. Okay, what you want to do is to automatically decide, not really automatically, but to be able to determine the position of the next set of trees. So you might think, oh, that's easy. You just have to measure it. So in this case, it's like a little over 3 centimeters. I'm just going to measure 3 centimeters and we'll be done with that. However, that doesn't really work in perspective because, in a perspective view, though in real life they're supposed to be equally distant from each other, in perspective view it actually shrinks. So this looks wide, but here it looks pretty narrow. So we can't just do the measurement in perspective. There is a way to do that, but you're going to have to do a bit of line work. So we assume that the heights of this are the same. And what you're going to do is we're going to X that out. So I'm just going to X this part here. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to find the horizontal line across the center. So you have that. Now, to find the next position of the tree, you will take this corner and extend a line through this middle intersection towards the ground. So I'm going to connect a line from this top part towards this vertices or this vertex, bring it down to the ground, and you'll see that it's the same distance. Then you can now bring up a new post and they're of the same distance. So let's repeat that. I'm going to X that out. Find that middle part through the center, and this point connect with this corner towards the ground level. It's right here. And now this is the position of the next post, and they're spaced equally. So you might be wondering, what if the distances of the trees are the same, but the heights of the trees are different? And that usually occurs in real life. Doesn't really matter. If I extend this height and I have a tree that's this tall, you're just going to have to make sure that you have the same height reference. Let's say, okay, so that's the height reference right there. And that's where you're going to be placing that X to find that center. And again, from this corner over to this corner, we're going to draw that line to the ground, and you have a new tree spaced equally with the rest. Same thing if the tree is shorter. If the tree is shorter right there, you just have to use the same height. So same height will make an invisible, a light line right there. Then we already have this reference. You can X this out if you want it to be more accurate. But here we have our line that goes straight right there. Extend the ground from this corner to this middle vertex. We bring it to the ground, and now you have your new post or new tree, and they're all spaced equally. You will do this for your perspective view. So I'm going to start with, let's say I want to do that row of trees. I'm going to start with my horizon line. So this is my horizon line. And I have we'll use this vanishing point, the right vanishing point. We'll start our tree over here. So I just need 2 of those, like what we did here. So I want the road, let's say this is the edge of the road right here. And then I'm going to place my first tree, or at least the post. I'm going to paste it or place it right here. So that's my first post. And I'm just going to establish where that second post is going to be. So I'm going to do it here. Let's say it's either tall or short, doesn't matter. So I'm just going to make it taller. Okay, for instance. So we need to make sure that these are all the same height all throughout for our reference line. So if we're going to start here, then we're going to project that to our right vanishing point. So this thing is now this thing, and the height of this in perspective view, they will be the same because they are receding towards the vanishing point. So now that you have your first and the second post, and you have that height established, we're now going to do the X. Let's do that X for the posts, the first 2 posts. So you have that. Here is the middle part, the center. We're going to draw a line across that. In this case, since it's a horizontal line following this, we will project that to our right vanishing point across that middle vertex. And now we're going to do this corner up here and this corner or this vertex over here in the middle where we did that horizontal line. Bring that down to the ground plane, to the ground level, which is here. And now you have the position of that next tree. Okay. You'll now do the same. If you want a new tree over here, you're going to do the same process. So since we already have that middle line going through here, then you can choose not to do the X anymore because we already have that horizontal line. You can just go straight to this top corner, down the middle, on the right side, towards the ground. This is now the position of that next post. We'll be continuing that. That's the next. Continue that. That's the next. And of course, like we mentioned a while ago, the trees or the posts don't have to be the same. In your final drawing, you can have one tree high as tall as that, another tree can be shorter, but they're all spaced quote unquote equally because we divided it based on this system. So this now is something that you could do for your perspective drawings as well. Now, the next question, which also has something to do with sectioning, is what if you had a specific space, a specific size, and you want to divide it equally? So, what does that mean? For example, I have, let's say, a shelf. So, I'm going to do a shelf, let's say, in 2-point perspective. Let's do a shelf right here. Or I'm going to do locker, yeah, a set of lockers. So let's say this is gym lockers, and we have our basic cube right here, and I want cabinets over here. Let's say I want to have 5 equal cabinets here. So you know that in perspective view, the distances of this, even though they're theoretically or in real life the same distance, but in perspective view they diminish as you go further towards the vanishing point. Here you have a finite space. How now do you divide this into 5 equal, quote-unquote equal spaces in perspective? So in order to do that, we're going to have to do some memorization. Okay, so this is not something that's straightforward. This is something that you might need to memorize. Let's go to our next page. By now, you know that if you want to divide something, you want to divide a plane into 2 equal portions, you know that you can X this out so that you'll find that center. Then you can divide it into 2 equal parts vertically, or take a line through the center and you now have 2 equal parts horizontally, or 4 equal parts 4 quarters. So that is for if you want to divide this by 2, or right now if you want to divide this by 4, then you just X this out, X that out. Now you've divided this into 4 equal sections. If you want to further divide this into 8, then you do more of those divisions. So I'm going to X out these, go to the center, and now you know that you have 8. So you can do 2, 4, 8, and 16, and so forth using that method. So I'm going to do that very quickly in perspective. So I have my, let's do a left vanishing point right here. I'm going to do, let's do that locker thing. So I'm going to do a basic cube, basic block. Let's say we have that. And then we have our so this is now the block that we created. So just to complete it, I'm just going to do these lines so that we can see the portion that is behind. This is always great, one of our best practices. So you now have our locker shape or locker form. Now, in this front part, I want to divide this into, let's say, 4 equal cabinets. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a bit of allowance over here, just an allowance so that it's not touching the outer portion. So you have that. This is where the cabinets will be. And it's here now where I can do that X projections. So I'm dividing this now into 2. Here's the center, and now I can bring a line going down. So now I've divided the locker into 2 quote-unquote equal sections. To make this into 4, then I'm just going to have to X that top portion and then X that other portion. We have the center of that. Then we can now bring 2 lines over here down. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal doors or cabinets. If you want to put the handle, then let's say we're going to start with the vanishing point. We're just going to project something there. And we can now eyeball, okay, I'm just going to place 4. Maybe I'll have the first one here, second one there, third one here, and then the fourth one here. So now I have my lockers in place in perspective view. So I can further divide this into 8 or 16 if I feel like it, but at least you can now divide planes or faces into these segments. The next, let's divide something into 3 equal sections. So we're going to start again with a block. So we have a reference of what to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll do the X again. So let's do that X. So that's the first step. And then we're going to divide that in the middle. The next step is we're going to go with this corner, and this point in the middle, and this corner. We're going to create an arrow. So we're going to create an arrow there. So just remember, after the X part, you do a vertical line, and then you create an arrow shape from this corner to this center vertex to this corner. Now we can divide it by 3. If you see these intersections that we created, and you draw a line down, now you create your 3 equal sections. You can also do this horizontally. So if I have, let's say, this block again, and I want to divide it horizontally by 3 equal sections, we'll start with the X. We'll run a line down or across the middle. Then we're going to do a corner, middle point, corner. It can be in this direction or it can be in this direction. Doesn't really matter. So here we do corner, middle vertex, corner. We're going to build that arrow. And now you have your intersections right there. That's where you draw the final line for your equal 3 parts. So let's do that again for our locker. Let's say I want to do let's do this in the other direction. So I have this vanishing point that way. I have another set of lockers here, and then I'm gonna take this down. Then we'll just complete the box for formality's sake, just for best practices. And then, so we have our basic block. And it is here on this front face where I'm going to divide. So let's follow that procedure. Let's start with the X right there. You have that middle part. We can now go vertical across, vertical here. Now you have that center point, that one, corner and corner. We now go here and there. So you now have these intersections where you can draw your vertical lines. And now you've now divided this face or this plane into 3 quote-unquote equal sections. So I'm just going to erase a bit of that, not too much, so I can still see the construction lines. So you can see now these are the 3 sections of that. Okay, so now you can do 3, 2, 3, 4. You can also do 6. How will you do 6? To do 6, you just divide it first by 2 and then divide things by 3. So I'm going to start by dividing this by 2. This is now 2. And you will now divide this by 3, divide this by 3. So I'm going to X this one out. Let me erase that so that it's going to be clearer. So I've divided this into 2 sections, 2 equal sections. Then we're going to divide each by 3. So X that out, X. Then we'll do our vertical lines for both. And we have our arrow here and our arrow here. Then you have your intersections over here where you can draw your vertical line. And now you have your 6 equal segments or portions. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll do the same if you want to do it in perspective. So this is 6. So now you've done 2, you can do 3, you can do 4, you can do 6. Next, we're going to do 5 and 7.